Today we're putting new line onto a bait casting reel. The first thing you need to do to set this up is to just put your new line spool somewhere where it can rotate freely without becoming tangled up or jumping around a lot. I just use a little piece of a cardboard box with a metal rod through it. And you also want to make sure that as you pull line off of this spool, it rotates in the same direction as the spool on your reel. So you can see that was going clockwise. If you look at the spool right here in my reel, as I turn the crank, it is also turning clockwise. That's important if you're using monofilament or fluorocarbon lines, because you'll add a lot of line twist if the line comes off of the new spool in the opposite direction that it goes on. The next thing we need to do is put your line through the first guide on your rod, and then bring it down to the reel. You want to put this through the line guide in the front of the reel. And then you need to wrap it around the spool. So put it down the back side and try to bring it forward. I like to use a little hemostat or needle nose pliers to reach in and grab that line. And then bring it back up to the top. Now you could tie a knot here, but if your spool has holes drilled in it, then you can also tie it right to those holes by just putting it right into one of the holes and popping it out a different one. It doesn't matter which hole you go in or come out. And once you've grabbed that line, you can pull it back up to the top. And you could tie an arbor knot or a uni knot or something right here, but I actually like to put the line back out the line guide, and I tie the knot in front of the reel because I've got all kinds of room out here. So I just tie a uni knot. I'll show you how to do that here. I'm just going to put those two lines right next to each other and then bring the tag end back behind the other two lines, which creates a loop that I can put my finger into. Now I'm going to take the tag end and put it through that loop, bring it behind the two lines again, up and through the loop again, back behind the two lines, and back through the loop one more time. Then grab the tag end and you can pull that knot tight, trim the extra line off. And now when you pull on the main line, it'll slide that knot right down through the line guide and onto the spool to tighten up. All right, now we're ready to start putting the line onto the reel. So I'm going to hold the line with my left hand about a foot ahead of the reel. And I'm going to hold a little bit of tension on there by pressing it between my finger and my thumb. I'm not holding it right in front of the reel because the line guide up here is also called a level wind because it's supposed to evenly lay your line across the whole spool by moving back and forth. And if you're holding it with tension really close to the reel, then it's just interfering with that level wind's ability to move back and forth smoothly. So I hold it about a foot ahead, start cranking, and just make sure that the line looks to be going on evenly. It's not slipping or anything. This all looks good, so I'm going to keep cranking until the spool is covered with line all the way from left to right. And then at that point, I'm actually going to switch and connect the monofilament to a braided line and fill the spool the rest of the way with the braid. If you're just using monofilament or fluorocarbon, you can just keep going until you're about a 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the spool, and that's where you'll stop. Okay, so right about here, I've got the whole bottom of the spool covered with the monofilament, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to connect the braided line with a double uni knot. Okay, I cut the monofilament line about 18 inches up from my reel, and I switched out the monofilament spool with the braided spool. So now the next thing I need to do is run the braided line down through the first guide. And now I can tie these lines together. So we're going to use two uni knots, just like the uni knot I used before to tie the line to the spool. I'm going to put these lines together, bring that monofilament tag end over to make a loop, and put my finger in the loop. And then I'm going to take the tag end and go through the loop, around those two lines, through the loop again, around the lines, and through the loop a third time. Pull the tag end tight. Now I'll go to the other side and do the exact same thing with the braid. I'll bring the tag end back over to make a loop. I'm going to put the tag end through there, wrap it around, bring it through the loop again, wrap it around, through the loop a third time, pull it tight. Now when you pull on the lines, those knots will come together and tighten up. You can trim the tag ends off. And now you can reel that in and start filling up the spool with braid. Okay, now that we've got our braid attached to our monofilament line, we can again just reach up about a foot ahead of the reel, hold some tension on the line, and just start bringing that braided line in. And we're going to keep reeling this until we get to about 1/16 of an inch from the top of the spool. Okay, and I'm going to stop right there. So you can see there's a little bit of the black part of the spool showing still. Now you just need to cut the braid. So I'm going to cut that above the first guide and then thread it through the rest of the guides on your rod. Now I would highly recommend taking this outside right away and tying your line to something heavy and then walking back about 80 to 100 feet and then putting a piece of electrical tape on your spool right on the line, push it down hard onto the line, then walk back to where you tied it off, reeling as you go, keeping some tension on the line. And what that's going to do is it's going to prevent a backlash from going any deeper than where that tape is. So you won't ruin a whole spool of line if you get a bad backlash. You might have to cut the line off that's above the tape, but you won't ruin the line that's below. Also, for tips on adjusting baitcaster settings and casting, check out my 3-minute video on how to set up and cast a baitcaster. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll catch you next time.